talking about. All of our Patreon supporters who stand with the channel, who just give a little something each month to let us know. And we appreciate what you're doing. Appreciate you taking your time and energy and what it takes to put this together. So all the Patreon supporters, I definitely thank you 1,000 times. And if you're not a Patreon supporter, scroll up. Pragmatic Crystal has been faithful, dropping the links in the chat. And it's not in the description of the video at the time of the live, but it will be there very soon. So yes, thank you to all the supporters. Come on into the chat. I like to say here, greet somebody in Reason's name. What's up, my unique Monique? Great to see you. David DeBow, what's happening? Hello all. In Reason's name, indeed. So what is this series about? Conversations with Christians. I still, to this day, even though sorry, if you see me frozen, I'll unfreeze in a second. I publicly deconverted in 2022, January of 2022. I've been relentless on Facebook talking about why I do not believe the Bible, Christianity, Jesus, the Christian God, or any God for that matter. And I still get Christians to this day who are like, yo, so why don't you believe? And I'm like, yo, I wrote a book about it. And I got a whole podcast dedicated to it. And so I'm like, you know what? It would be helpful if I just started having conversations. There are Christians who said, yo, your podcast is an echo chamber because all you do is bring on other people who think like you. I don't care about those kind of comments. I don't mind having an echo chamber. Christianity is an echo chamber to me in many respects. A lot of people who are in Christianity or most religions, you shield yourself off from any ideas that would be too antithetical, dangerous to your faith. So you can't be mad at somebody like me who wants to cultivate a safe place for people who are trying to unthink those Christian thoughts. So I don't mind having an echo chamber. So this series is not an attempt to, no, it's not an echo chamber. Look, I brought a Christian on. It's not that at all. But I have been wanting to have thoughtful, well-spoken, sincere Christians on the channel. What's up, Goat Herder's Guide to the Galaxy? Go check out my man. Go check out his channel. He put out a song a week ago on his YouTube that is, I mean, everything he does I love, but the one he just put out recently was one of my favorites from him. Go check out Goat Herder's Guide to the Galaxy. But I wanted to do this series now because I felt like, okay, I've done enough. I've put my ideas out there enough so that there are people who, if you want to know where I'm coming from, you should know where I'm coming from by now so that we can actually get on the platform together and have a good conversation without me having to go back and cover stuff that I've spoken about at length before. And so if I do go back, it'll probably be just for the sake of clarity for watchers, but I'm hoping to have a great conversation with this brother. Mr. Biscuit is the first guest in the series, and I'm going to let him explain his name because I actually don't even know what the name Mr. Biscuit means. So we'll have him explain it. He is a apologist, a Christian apologist, and a battle rapper. He's got lots of response or reaction videos on his channel where he's responding to or reacting to people like Harry Mack and stuff like that. But every once in a while, I'll see him pop up on Ichabod. There are Christians who watch my channel, and sometimes he'll pop up and say, "Hey, like, can I come on? Can we kick it?" And I forgot that he'd even suggested that. And then just last week, he said it again, like, "Yo, can I come on the channel?" And I said, "Oh, I'm looking for Christians anyway. So if you're a Christian out there and you're like, hey, I'd like to go and chop it up with another Christian. If you came to see a debate, I don't know how satisfied you're going to be because we're going to disagree. I'm quite sure we're going to disagree. But I don't really do debates. I like dialogue. I like gaining understanding. I like giving understanding. Conversations, to me, the goal of conversations is to win people over. The goal of debates is to win over people. And I'm not trying to win over anybody. I'm trying to get understanding. I want to see humanity get further. And I want to help remove the barriers from our advancement. And so with that being said, no further ado, please help me welcome to Ichabod, Mr. Biscuit.
Salute. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me on.
It's going great. Yeah, it's a pleasure. First, can you just tell us the name Mr. Biscuit? How did you come to that name?
Bro, it's really insane. So I was out of work. All stories begin with you being broke.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah, 100%. So I didn't have a job. I was staying with my my roommate Ali, and he's like, "Yo, you're gonna have to start paying somehow." My man Black Pegasus, shout out to him. His channel has like 500,000 subs. He's killing it. So he does rap reactions, stuff like this. But this is my guy. Back in Colorado Springs, he started to set up battle rap events at the Union Station. I knew I could rap. And so, and the winner of the battle got like $1,000 at the end of the night. I'm like, okay, I don't got a job. I'm going to go in and try to get in this tournament. I did not have a rap name. So I'm standing in line, and they're like, the lady signing you up. She's like, what's your rap name? And I'm like, Lamont. Lamont's my real name, And so some guys behind me start making fun of me like this, you don't even got a rap name. You know what I'm saying? So I turn around, I'm like, bro, you could call me Mr. Biscuit for all I care. Right. I'm about to win this money. Right. And so people started laughing. I said, you could call me Mr. Biscuit for all I care. The girl actually wrote that down. So, bro, I'm at the bar and they're like, calling up to the stage, Mr. Biscuit. And everybody's drunk by this time. So everybody's cracking up. Right. It's like, and that's me. That's my name now. I got to run with it at that point. So, it kind of went down like that. I won the money and it just kind of became this chant like Mr. Biscuit, like this guy's live. So it stuck.
Now, I think I heard of you back before I came out as a non-believer, but where would I have heard, like, were you in the Christian rap world, or were you just a Christian who's a rapper, but you didn't really mess with the Christian hip hop community?
No, I did. I put out a couple albums as a Christian rapper. But as far as battle rap, I mean, the thing is, I'm blessed to I'm very good at anything that I put my mind to. And that's not bragging. Some people are just gifted in that way. Like if I put my mind to something, I'm very good at foregrounding the relevant details and backgrounding the irrelevant. Like I know what to ignore and what to pay attention to. So when I started battle rapping, I just flew. You heard of URL?
Yeah.
I'm undefeated on the URL app.
Oh, wow.
So like the URL signed me for like a year. I went through their crucible process and I beat everybody that they put in front of me so far. But I don't really do it anymore. I'm 38,
And you were a Christian while doing that?
Oh, yeah.
No?
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm curious, did you have any kind of like, I think I remember back when people like Street Hymns and Loso were getting into it.
Yeah,
there were Christians who were basically like, I don't know if that reflects the character of Christ. You're going in there basically to tear other people down. You had people like Dayton who came from the battle rap world, who was sort of like Dayton. I remember Dayton said, if I were to get in the battle rap world, I would do unchristian things because I just have these old reflexes from what I do when I battle rap. So him as a Christian, he used to roll with Eminem and D12 and all them. Dayton says, as a Christian, I can't do it because I know what it brings out of me. But these other dudes, Loso and Street Hymns, they can do it because they've got sort of like, they've already connected their Christ likeness to their battle rap mode.
Sure.
They don't have that old reflex. So I'm curious for you as a Christian going into battle rap, did you have to like beat down, I guess in Christian vernacular, your flesh to do it? Did you have any kind of like barriers, or what was it like?
Not really. And the reason for me, with all due respect to people like Dayton, I know Dayton, I know Bizzle, I know Street Hymns, A Ward, Saga. Those guys are amazing. Shout out to those guys.
Yeah.
The reason it never really hit for me is because I know that battle rappers are actors.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and you're paid to entertain. It's not even like Scribble Jam where you're coming off the top of the head with it. This is all pre-written months in advance. And so Mr. Biscuit is a character that expunges my id. If you're familiar with like the id, the ego, the super ego, right? It's a creative outlet for my drive, right? And so, yeah.
Let me show you how Christian I was, because the Christian in me is like, you shouldn't have a creative outlet for your id. You should be crucifying the id. So like for you
Yeah,
to
yeah,
have
yeah.
a creative outlet for it would be going against, and even as a Christian, I was not against battle rap, but I'm just saying,
Uh-huh.
hearing you say that, that's what the old Christian mind in me would have said to that. I don't know if you
Sure.
have any response for that at all, but
Yeah, the whole crucifying your flesh, or as Paul would put it, die daily.
Mhm.
I think it's dying to like malicious intent.
Gotcha.
And I mean, and of course, there's a lot of people who stay out of battle rap who would be like, that's a cop out. But if we
Mm.
go to like, Christian actors and actresses or Christian musicians that
Yeah.
sometimes want to tell a dark story about their past or create a dark narrative,
Yeah.
I don't think that that access to what's true, which is namely God and Christianity. We'll get into that, I'm sure. But access to that shouldn't stifle your creativity. It should enhance it.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. I appreciate that. So I went and checked out your channel and saw all the reaction videos.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw a few where you were dealing with, there was one where you reacted to the YouTuber Durante Lamar. And I said, y'all would love to talk with him about his response.
Shout out to Durante too.
Yeah. Have you ever kicked it with Durante?
I never have. No.
Okay. Well, we may get to that. We may not. And I would love to actually like do a series of these if we have enough to talk about. So we may get to the Durante piece today, but I only brought that up just now to say, I realize that your content on your channel that deals with your faith or deals with apologetics gets much less views than your content where you're reacting to rap. So I guess I'm just curious, like, why bring your reaction to Durante Lamar up on your channel where people are coming to it for this content about rap?
Because of ignorance, because of ignorance to how YouTube and the algorithm works. So despite the fact that there's like 18,000 subscribers on my YouTube, I've only been doing that for like 20 days, right? It's just skyrocketed because we search for insights, we search for epiphanies, and it's a really, really fun channel. We're doing a book club, and so even though it looks like an older channel, given how many subscribers they are, I really have no clue what the algorithm expects or wants. And so that was an error on my part, because as I'm doing like all these reaction videos to music, YouTube then knows what to expect from me. And so you don't want to confuse the algorithm by throwing out something that's, your personal interest. And so I started another channel called The Layman. And the reason I call a channel The Layman is because Socrates said, "My wisdom consists in the knowledge that I know nothing." Right. And so I think in keeping with, what you said in the introduction, I'm not here to debate. I'm here to exchange bad ideas for good ideas, even if the bad ideas are mine. So.
Excellent, man. So does that mean the kind of content that's not getting the numerous views on your channel, the personal stuff about your faith and all that will be on the Layman channel?
That will be on the Layman channel, yeah.
Okay.
And it's just for the sake of not confusing the algorithm. I want the algorithm to be able, like for the Layman channel, it's going to get a hold of that audience so that I can always be tagging the same thing. And so it knows what to shoot for. So
good stuff, man. Hey, go subscribe to Mr. Biscuit's channel on YouTube. And you said you already started the Layman, right?
That's right.
Can you drop that in the chat so people can go check that out?
Absolutely.
Yes. And while you guys are here, make sure to like and subscribe, because I don't get the algorithms either. Like, I'm still trying to figure out what the hell's going on.
Just drop that in the chat. Yep, The Layman.
Yep.
And there's a couple of videos in there. I'm going to be putting more of it. I think there's like 3 videos in there total, because I've been doing the Mr. Biscuit Speaks channel for a really long time. So
good stuff. All right. So wait, that's not what I wanted to put this one up. Okay. All right. So I have several questions for you, and you probably have questions for me. I saw you jumping into the chat on Ichabod several times. I don't know how far back it goes, but it really stood out. I think it was last week when you said you first came on and you were like, praise God. And I didn't know if you were like trolling or what.
I was trolling. It was totally a joke.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so I didn't know if you were a Christian saying that or a former Christian saying it. So I just was like, I'll let it go. And then you said something else. I think it was something like, hey, like, can I get on the channel? Then I figured you must be a Christian. I had no qualms with that. And then I think it was David DeBow or maybe David Divide 777. I got a couple of Davids on in my chat. one of them said, "Hey, I went and checked out his channel. It's pretty dope." And so I went and checked it out, and then I said, "Oh, okay. So this is a serious, like he's a thinker. He seems well read." Da, 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 da. And so the first question I have is, what has you tuning into Ichabod?
There has been very few like atheists to help me shape my faith. And I know that's not the intention of atheists, but my wife has this term, the holy opponent. So it's almost like, when a tree is growing, they did some experiments where they sheltered the trees from the wind. And they had no idea what effect that this would have. But as soon as they removed the boundaries, the trees died. Because the trees need the wind. They need that pressure in order to grow strong. It's like when they tell you that you shouldn't open the egg of a chick, right? Because that chick needs to strengthen itself by pressing against the egg. So I think what the atheist does for the Christian, if the Christian will allow it, is show you the cartoonish methods of thinking so that you can kind of unpack those and really question yourself. So I seek out atheists for that reason. And because you had an impact on me as a young person, like getting involved in hip hop. With the cross movement, I would steal your bars.
Get out of here.
Bro, I would steal your bars. I would steal Ambassador's bar, lyrically putting you down. The truth hits you, divine mixture, rhymes plus divine scripture. And people would be like, yo, like, you Christian rapper? And I was thinking, oh yeah, I stole those bars.
Okay, so you got multiple levels of interest.
Oh, here. For sure. Yeah,
that's what's up. So you just heard it from Mr. Biscuit. Christians, watch more atheist content. All right.
100%. If you're not doing that, then you're really doing yourself a disservice.
So I hear this from people often. They say, Brady, you may not be intending this, but you actually strengthen my faith. And I don't take that as a diss or a compliment. It's quite the conundrum to me. But I guess we'll dive into that a little bit more. Last question I have for you, then I'll let you, I guess, be the interviewer or kind of steer for a bit. Why did you want to come on the channel?
Just to test my assumptions. I have a lot of different theories. And I know that typically an atheist is going to have some kind of attitude for most of the things that I think. So I kind of want to test, to see what you think is reasonable. Because I'm sure when we have a conversation, you're going to say, some things I think, okay, well, that's reasonable. And then certain things you're like, oh, out of the question. There's no, And so just to kind of see where that balance is.
Love it. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. So I'll turn it over to you. Like, so you can guide. I'll say this. I have conversations. I don't have conversations with Christians on my channel. I have conversations with Christians in my life almost constantly. From the day that I came out as an unbeliever in January of 2022.
That was going to be my first question, by the way. Is like, how's the what's that been like?
Up until 2024, it was almost daily, like literally, that I was having conversations with Christians on Zoom, ongoing text, emails, DMs on Facebook. Now, granted, some of those are just people telling me I'm going to hell, but many of them are much more in depth, much more like just sincere. How do you go from being a fanatic for Jesus? That was my name as a rapper, Phanatik. I was a fanatic, but that was short for fanatic for Jesus. How do you go from being that to where you are now? And so, like I said, up until last year, it was literally every day. And I would carve out time in my day to have these conversations with people, aside from running the Facebook conversations I was having and doing this episode and just living a life. I say that to say I remain open for dialogue. So, I mean, I turn the floor over to you. You can ask whatever you want. We can just, from there, just start building.
I think I've heard you say before that you regret that a part of what you're doing right now is a result of like having a feeling of regret about the lies you told before as a Christian MC. And that was very interesting to me because a lot of times, I mean, even atheists, it's like they don't necessarily have a problem with Jesus. It's like when you ask an atheist, like, what do you think about Jesus? They'll usually say, oh, he was a great guy, and I don't believe he was God. I don't believe he was a prophet, anything supernatural. But yeah, I mean, he's somebody that you can look up to for moral guidance or whatever. Even Sam Harris, Sam Harris is like, yeah, you can't really read the New Testament and come out with this idea that you should be a terrorist or blow people up. So what is it? I mean, because I would think even as an atheist today, that music that you put out did more good for people than harm. Would you disagree, and why?
That's a great question, man. So I got this question from somebody on Facebook recently. They asked me, didn't I get anything beneficial from Christianity? And I get that question in a variety of ways. I did get benefits from Christianity. What Christianity did for me chiefly, amongst all the other things that it did, was it helped me to stop living a self-destructive life. Before I became a Christian, I was failing in high school. I used to get straight F's in high school. And I used to have one of my friends, my guy, Anthony, we used to brag about who got more F's on their report card. Like that's literally the kind of kid that I was.
Wow.
Stayed on punishment, stayed breaking curfew, stayed hanging out with the old heads on the block, drinking beer. And I never drank beer because I grew up in church, so I knew certain things were wrong, but I hung out around them. I never sold drugs, but I was a lookout kid for the drug dealers. Yo, the cops coming. I hung out on, like, I was just always in the streets, always cutting school, getting with girls, hanging with it. And I have no idea where I was going to end up. The only goal I had was to not live paycheck to paycheck like my parents. And I didn't know how I was going to not do that. I saw them struggling. I didn't want to do that.
Right.
But at the point when I gave my life to the God of the Bible, at that very point, some of my closest friends started getting arrested, had people looking for them to kill them. And so I saw the way they were going. I would have been right there with them. Christianity saved me from a self-destructive life. One of the things that I say, though, is I remember getting up to go to school in the morning, and as I passed my mother's room, she would be praying on her knees. And I know she was praying for me because I was a hellion. I was a terror. So I know that when I became a Christian and I stopped cursing, I stopped sleeping around, I stopped cutting school, I stopped jumping people and getting people jumped and all the stuff I was doing. I know my mother's prayers were answered. And I have no idea where my life would have ended up had I not become a Christian. I am grateful for that, let alone the career that I had as a Christian rapper and developing my skills as an educator and teacher. But the thing that I wish my mother, my society, my community, my family would have had a way to get me to stop being self-destructive without lying to me to do it, without telling me there's an eye in the sky watching you when mom's not around, and there's a hell waiting for you. Last thing I'll say, and I'll let you go. My grandmother told me when I was about 9 years old, if you don't eat every day, you're going to starve, right? I said, yeah, that makes sense. She said, well, prayer is like food for your spirit. If you don't pray, your spirit's going to starve. No matter what dirt I did from that time all the way up until probably somewhere in like the mid 2000s, I prayed every single night because my grandmother told me, if you don't pray, your spirit's going to starve. Like, those were the ways that they got me to stop being self-destructive and start thinking about being constructive. You know, the 5%ers, right?
Right.
Jay Electronica says he was homeless on the streets until the 5%ers rolled up on him and informed them, you either build or destroy. Everything you do in life, you either build or destroy. Well, that changed his life. So the 5%ers have a way of getting people to stop being destructive and start being constructive.
There you go.
And so that's what Christianity did for me at the foundational level. So yes, the rhymes that I wrote, the stuff that I said, there was something constructive in it. But I just wish I could have got that without having to embrace what I now think is mythology.
Got you. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, as far as mythology, did you happen to catch? There was a debate between Richard Dawkins and Jordan Peterson, and it was recent. It was on the Cosmic Skeptic channel.
No, that sounds
And
interesting. But
oh
Jordan
man,
Peterson, he wouldn't be the interesting one, but go ahead.
yo, like the Jordan Peterson slander these days is absolutely absurd. But him and Dawkins talk to each other because Jordan Peterson is troubled. It's clear. He cries on every other interview. He has something going on. I don't know what it is, but I mean, his brilliance, in my estimation, speaks for itself. But I mean, that aside, he and Richard Dawkins are talking on Cosmic Skeptic's channel, and I love Cosmic Skeptic. He's my favorite atheist on YouTube, hands down, Alex O'Connor. But he's moderating this debate between Richard Dawkins and Jordan Peterson, and Richard Dawkins says, to your point about mythology, Richard Dawkins says, "Look, I'm a man of fact, and you're a man of myth." And to my surprise, Jordan Peterson just agreed with that. So when I was looking into it, I was like, okay, mythology, right? Myth is how you organize the facts because none of us can just deal with straight facts. There's too many of them. We would be paralyzed by the complexity of reality if we saw it for what it is, right? We have to filter the facts through our biology. We can only handle so many facts. And so the way you organize what you ignore and what you pay attention to, that is your myth, right? And that's up to you. And so Christians choose to foreground certain things and background other things. They ignore certain things and they pay attention to certain things. That's all a salience landscape is. And that is the Christian myth. And it seems like the Christian myth is working astoundingly well. For most of the people that are inside that tradition. It has a lot to do with what I think I wrote the tenets down: deny yourself, love your enemies, forgive without limit, believe in the teachings of Jesus, and renounce everything, more or less.
Can you say those one more time? Deny
yourself, love your enemies,
forgive without limit,
believe in the teachings of Jesus, and renounce everything. It seems to be more or less those 5 principles. Is the spirit of the Christian mythology. And it seems like those who take those seriously, the more seriously you take those, the more fulfillment your life will have, the more meaning your life will have.
So 2 things I think, what you call myth, I would call meta-narrative.
Okay.
I think myth has a connotation that actually is a warranted connotation, that you're structuring I don't even know if I could say structuring the facts, because I like what you said about there are too many facts to have them all in mind at one time. So you have to organize them in a way that allows you to get to what's important at the moment.
Exactly. And how do you choose what to ignore, right? And human beings thrive because we're really good at ignoring certain things and paying attention to other things. If you're just a person of facts, you're just perpetually paralyzed by the complexity in whatever environment you're in.
Now, let me work with your definition then. Like, I was going to try to switch it to meta-narrative, but even if we do that, so the question I have is, what do you do if your myth, the meta-narrative, I'm going to try to maybe make those interchangeable for the sake of this conversation. What do you do if your myth, the thing that you're using to organize all the facts, what do you do if someone who's helping you to set up that myth or prop up that myth or give you the vernacular for your myth, if they begin to include non-factual things into the mythos, such that you're now, you ever see people like when they have like the greens, looks like I'm digging up my nose right there. I froze in a weird position.
I got you. Now we both doing it. You good.
You know what I mean? You ever see like those green screens, right? When they have actors with the green screen, sometimes they'll put, if they need to make a monster or whatever. I hope this analogy works out as well as it's working out in my mind right now.
No, you're good.
Green screen background. We need an alien creature or Gollum from Lord of the Rings. We need somebody to move like an alien or like Gollum would move. So we're going to put you in green as well. So the green is background. you're wearing green. We can take all the green out, but we need to plot the movement that we want. So we're going to put you not just in green, we're going to put these dots all over, these white dots all over your body, so that wherever you move, we can imprint something else, the body of an alien or golem or whatever, a bear, whatever it is. The myth in this analogy is the green screen and the green body. The facts that we want to pay attention to are all the little white dots that are going all over, right? So that whenever, if it's an ape in, Planet of the Apes, whatever the character's doing, all we want are the white dots. We're going to plot that and put something else there to map onto it to make the creature move, right? The myth is the green suit and the green screen. The facts are the little dots. You mess the entire scenario up if instead of just putting white dots on the body that you want to move, you put random white dots where you don't want the movement at. Now you can't make that an alien or a bear or a ape or whatever it is, because now you've got these white dots in the scenario that are not doing what you want the creature to do.
Right.
Those white dots that are not moving like an ape or moving like an alien, those white dots are just as mythical or what's the word I'm looking for? They're just as unusable, unworkable, unhelpful. That's what I'm looking for. Those white dots that are not doing the real action you want are just as unhelpful as the green screen and the green that you're trying to get out of here.
Okay.
So to me, the problem with religion, this is a long way to get to this point. I apologize if you're not tracking with me. The problem with religion is if you say it just helps us organize the facts, because that's really all we want. We're going to tell a story around these facts to help get the facts to you. But really, we don't want you to pay attention to the overall story, just the facts. So let's say if somebody were to say, okay, so the Adam and Eve story is myth, because there are Christians who would say this. Adam and Eve story is myth, but the truth in it is that God made man special above all the rest of creation. We just want you to pay attention to that, but we're telling it to you in a mythical form.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens when somebody takes not just the little dot that you want them to take, that man is special above all creation, but they take the actual story you told them as, and see, because God made Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve, now I got to be against gay marriage. Mm-hmm. Now I can't accept evolution because God didn't say we came from common descent with the great apes. No, God said he made man special from the dirt. Now you've got things being taught as fact that they were not the things you were trying. They were just part of the myth and not the facts that you. So anyway, I said a whole lot. I hope you understand what I'm getting at in terms of how separating facts from myth becomes a problem when you're including things in your myth that are not fact, but you're not letting people separate those two. They've got to call those things fact as well.
I think I understand your meaning.
I'm sorry for that long rant.
No. I think it was needed. And let me ask you this in response. When you watch the movie, The Little Mermaid, Finding Nemo, Lion King, do you believe that these stories are telling the truth?
Well, let's first separate the truth from truths. I think the stories can be telling true things. And when I say true things, I mean things that mirror experience or experiences that we want to have.
Mm-hmm. And I would go so far as to say the reason a good movie is a good movie, like a movie is only good to the extent that we resonate with it. And like, and that deep resonation is like, yeah, there are tools in this movie that I can actually use and apply. Right. And so when we say, oh, this movie was so good, you got to see this movie. What we're saying is there's something hidden in there. There's perennial patterns that you can catch in this movie that you can use in real life circumstances. And so that is pragmatically true. It might not be a truth that corresponds to reality, but I mean, we're not naive realists. None of us has access to reality. We all just have our our perspective.
Perception of it. Yeah.
And that's the reason stories transcend the correspondence theory of truth, because stories, instead of telling us the truth, they show us the truth, right? It immediately resonates. And so like so if you take the death of Jesus, for instance, that instance of radical non-retaliation, right? What the death and the resurrection of Jesus is telling us is that all of us are recipients of radical non-retaliation. Martin Luther King was an example of radical non-retaliation. I think there's who's that guy that black guy who visits the Klan members, right?
I forget his name. Yeah,
David something, right? He's this black guy. He befriends members of the Klan, and so far he has gotten 200 of them to turn in their robes. And the reason for this is radical non-retaliation completely fricassees our cognitive coding, because if I'm going to do something evil to you, then I have a plan. Like, I know you're going to probably retaliate. You're probably going to hate me. I have to make plans for what your family is going to do or what your friends are going to do to retaliate against me. So after I do something evil to you, when you respond to me in love instead of hatred, I am paralyzed by the complexity of that. It's very easy to paralyze the human brain. You're just like, what just happened? And in that moment, I have genuine freedom. I have freedom to either double down on my hatred. I have the freedom to either maybe wallow in misery and not accept grace, or I have the ability to just join that side. And there's cognitive science studies that show well above chance when people are recipients of radical non-retaliation, it changes them in meaningful and powerful ways. Like, there's people who have like murdered somebody, and then the victim's family will come and say, hey, we just want to say we forgive you and we love you and we accept you. And that's a crazy thing. Like, and this is one of the reasons that the biblical writers called it transcendent, is because it almost is. It's like everything in our biology tells us not to do that. Don't embrace a murderer, especially if they murdered someone in your own clan, right? The biological chores are to feed, fight, flee, and reproduce, right? And so it's almost a transcendent thing to break the cycle in that way of giving someone love when they deserve your shame or when they deserve to be retaliated against, and I feel like I'm a recipient of that.
I mean, the idea of radical non-retaliation, I think, is amazingly useful if you have the ability to resurrect yourself, right? Like, if you can, if I don't have to worry about staying dead, I can let you kill me and I can come back from that. I can respawn.
No, check this out about staying dead, staying dead, right? Your biology will stay dead. I don't have any reason to think that when your body dies, that body is dead. But your body is something you have. It's not something you are, right? So Jesus's message is, what right do you have to identify with the flesh? Aren't you a pattern? Aren't you a way of being, right? You were a rapper. You still like hip hop. You're a deep thinker, right? These are what you really are. You're really these patterns. So the low resolution image of what you are is a human being. But even science is telling us, it's like, when you look closely at any object, you'll see patterns. Like even this water bottle cap. If you look closely at it, you'll just see dancing molecules. You'll see processes. So similarly with you, what all Jesus did is say, hey, look, I am not a human being. I am a way of being. I am the way, right? And by identifying with a way of being, you can't kill Jesus, right? Jesus is going to resurrect as soon as you kill him. He's a way of being. So which is the reason, when Paul on the road to Damascus, Jesus says, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? Jesus is like, I'm still clearly here,
So I'm curious, because one of the issues, well, I don't even go there. I'll just ask, do you believe that Jesus did rise bodily?
I don't know whether Jesus rose bodily.
Okay.
But I will say that Jesus never made it a salvific issue in Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. I know the Apostle Paul did.
Mhm.
The Apostle Paul said, "Look, without the resurrection, without the resurrection, your faith is worthless." And I have no reason to believe that he didn't mean the bodily resurrection when he said that. But Jesus was asked multiple times what's necessary to be saved. And even in the post-resurrection appearances, Jesus never said, "Hey, by the way, this resurrection and your belief in it is absolutely crucial for your salvation."
So we're getting into several different issues that will come into play. Is you've got multiple people putting words in Jesus's mouth and putting beliefs in the Christian's mind. So you have Paul, who's the first writer. Like, we don't know about Jesus until Paul writes, and then we get the gospel writers, decades after that. So, but you've got all these different people. Shout out to Michael Apple. We were just joking about this on Facebook today. You've got all these different people writing about what Jesus thinks, what Jesus has said, and what Christians ought to believe. And Christians spend a lot of time harmonizing these ideas. They have to spend a lot of time harmonizing them, because what it really looks like when you really put the magnifying glass to it, they don't really agree with each other. And so it's fun as a Christian to try to make them agree, because they really don't. And then your theology becomes this sort of potpourri of all these different flavors and ideas. And you could find yourself thinking one way, but then also leaning another way, and then living in the tension between these two different ideas. All that is just to get back to the point of the idea of Jesus being a way of being and not being a human being.
Well, I mean, look, was Jesus a human being? Of course, Jesus was a human being, but a human being is just a low resolution image of a way of being. I mean, and I think that goes beyond. I mean, that's worldview transcendent. That's just basic science now. I mean, but because like the thing is, if you were to meet with your friend for coffee, and instead of acting like you were acting like me, they would be like, "Whoa, something's off. You look like you, but you're acting in this." They know your spirit. They know your way of being. Right. And so Jesus was saying, look, I am primarily that, right? I am the way, right? And he didn't say I am a way of being. When he said I am the way of being, he's saying this way matches the divine way. This is God's way of being, because God is spirit, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting. When you say these kinds of things in Christian circles, do you get amens? Or do you get people who are like, that sounds kind of like new agey? Because I'm trying to put your Christianity in the spectrum of Christianities.
Yeah. Of course, there are certain Christians who would say that I'm not a Christian at all. But those are the same type of Christians that would say the Catholics are an apostate body, or the Mormons aren't Christians. And what I do to them is I quote them the words of Jesus, right? Jesus was approached by his disciples, and they said, "Oh, there's somebody who's healing and casting out demons, and he's not among us. He's not using your name," right? Or no, he's casting out demons in your name, and he's not among us. That was the thing. And Jesus said, "Let him alone. Those who are not against us are for us," right? And there's another scripture where Jesus says, "I was thirsty, and you gave me water. I was hungry, and you gave me food." And they were confused. He said, "When were you thirsty and we gave you water? When were you hungry and we gave you food?" And he said, "Whenever you did to the least of these, you did it to me." Which in my mind means there are people who will see the kingdom of heaven who will have no idea who Jesus is. They were just participating in the way. They were participating in the way of being, which is what Jesus always was in the beginning. And so I think a focus on the historical Jesus, the man, the human being, it's important, but it lacks depth. If that's the only, so.
So I guess in what I'm trying to understand is, do you see Jesus as just one of the ways of being, the highest way of being, the only way of being? Like, where would you? Because this will help me understand what brand of Christianity you're actually bringing. Because there are Christians who would say no, like the New Testament faith. What's the guy who wrote the book? Is it Discovering God? I have it in my Kindle. He won the he won the Christianity Today's award for basically trying to reconcile Christianity with all the different religions, and he basically made it sort of the highest amongst all these other acceptable ways of being. I guess I'm just, do you think that Christianity has a higher truth value, or do you think it's just one of many roads to truth?
I think it's the highest truth value, because God is the superlative that makes our comparative categories make any sense. So, I mean, there's lots of different ways of being. Like there's the Christmas spirit. You've heard anybody say like, hey, have the Christmas spirit, right?
Mm-hmm.
That means participate in a way of being that includes giving, and that includes, decorating a tree or singing songs, whatever. That's the Christmas spirit. And there's lots of different, there's a spirit of, fatherhood, and there's lots of different things. But what Jesus was saying about saying, I am the way, meaning like the only passage to God, is this radical non-retaliation and renouncing of everything, meaning not identifying with anything transient, including your own body. Right. And that's a very difficult thing for a capitalist. It's a very tough thing on the West.
Okay. The things that you laid out, those pillars that you just laid out, I was going to ask, what is it that makes Christianity higher than, let's say, Buddhism? And I guess I'm wondering, would you say, is it those things? Is it the radical non-retaliation? Is it because when I hear radical non-retaliation, even when you talk about, like, let's say Dr. King, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many people look at what Dr. King and the nonviolent movement, they look at what they did and say, oh, see, that must be the way. Very few people factor in that Dr. King and the nonviolent movement is not really what won the day. What won the day was you had the Black Power movement waiting in the wings.
Mm-hmm.
And the powers that be knew, who was it? One of the leaders from the Last Poets, right? The Last Poets said, when y'all killed Dr. King, you destroyed your last chance at dealing with the peaceful version of me. Now you're going to have to deal with this other version of me. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just that the nonviolence and the radical non-retaliation melted the hearts of racist whites and made them say kumbaya. There was civil unrest. There were riots in the streets. There was, you know what I mean? Like, so.
Absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct.
That makes me wonder, it's like, what is the good of radical non-retaliation? Like, if we practice radical non-retaliation, who was it? Is the old quote, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind? Like, at some point, you're not here to benefit from what your non-retaliation produced. Someone else can get the benefit from it, but you can't.
Now, every time you say you can't, you're pointing to the body.
Individual.
You're pointing to the individual, right? And I think that Christianity, and to answer two questions at once, right? Christianity and the other world religions are fundamentally similar and only superficially different, right? So in the Vedas, they would say Tattvam Asi, meaning thou art that, you are the whole thing, or Atman is Brahman, meaning that this superficial separate self is an illusion, right? In reality, there is only oneness, right? There is only, and Sufism under, Ibn Arabi for Islam. So I identify with the Sufi mystics too, and they would say the same thing, that you are just this temporary state of becoming where God is the only being. So when you point at yourself and say, you won't exist anymore, of course you will. You only won't exist if you identify with that which is dying anyway, namely your body. Why would you identify with that, right? And that's kind of that. The entire Bible is telling you not to identify with transient things. Whenever Satan shows up in the Bible, he's telling you, hey, identify with this thing. I know it's going to die, but just make this the most salient thing in your, you feel me?
Yeah. So you may not agree with this. I think that the biblical narrative actually does the opposite. It doesn't try to make the one, the many, it actually incentivizes the one with the idea that the way that you prolong you-ness, your individuality, the whole idea of a hope, whether it be heaven or whether it be just in the land that God restores, is the continuation of you as you. And so I do think it's kind of new agey to make the Bible's message, and far be it from me. It is probably like folks in the chat, like, why is he fighting for Christianity? Well, like who's the Christian in this conversation?
No, but listen, before you continue, this is one of the reasons it's dope talking to you, is because you have that perspective. You were deep in the church before, so you can bring a lot of light. But go ahead, continue.
Yeah. So I think what Christianity and most religions do, even though I think you're right, when you start talking about the Vedas and you start talking about Hinduism and Buddhism, there are ways where I'm trying to say so many things right now. I think what religion has done is it recognized a fundamental problem of existence. A fundamental problem of existence is individualism. The fact that I identify as me, and I have wants, I have needs, I have desires, I have agendas, and I'm going to go about pursuing those. And I'm even going to do it. So it's not just having self-interest, it's selfishness. I'm going to pursue those wants, desires, goals of mine at the expense of someone else. That's where self-interest transfers into selfishness. Okay. And what most religions have done is they recognize it's that self that's the problem. How are we going to solve it? And they've each come up with individual ways to help beat down the self. Christianity has its own way of beating down the self. It's the idea of dying to oneself. It's the idea of loving the neighbor as oneself. Right. But there's still this idea of, but you've got to at least acknowledge and recognize and love yourself first. There's not this, you don't start with the obliteration of self. You start with the recognition of self. And then what you want for yourself, want that for someone else. So Jesus says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. He stole that from Hillel the Elder, who says, what is objectable for yourself, don't do that to somebody else. There's always this recognition of the self. And then what Christianity does is it finds a way to prolong the self indefinitely.
See,
right?
and I agree with everything you're saying. I would just reverse it. Because you say you should start with the self, and then you should, after you have taken care of yourself, you should then look at the wider world and maybe consider yourself, a part of your culture or your responsibility to society, let's say. I would say that we should do it like it happens naturally. Like when you're in the womb, you don't recognize any difference between the agent and the arena. You're in the womb. You don't know that mom is out there and you're in here. You don't know any of that. You're just feeling emotions. You're going with the flow, and there's this deep trust maybe that you're going to be taken care of. And I think that we should do that as adults. And this is what Jesus meant by being born again. Eviscerate the differences between you and your neighbor. Treat them as one thing. Just like a baby in the womb doesn't know the difference between itself and its mother. Go back to that place. And then out of that place, once you've embodied that knowledge, that all is one, then you can have fun as an individual, because then every person you meet, they're just you will have a felt recognition of your shared being. And I think that's what love is. So if I say I love you, that means when I see you, I have a felt recognition of our shared being. Even though there appears to be a difference, I realize that's just my eyes. That's just the faultiness of my biology, right? In reality, there's only one thing.
So here's why I like humanism, because I think I get the spirit of what you're saying. I think that's doing too much, though, because there's a saying, right? What is the saying? What you eat don't make me shit, right? Like, if we really were one, I shouldn't be hungry if you just ate. So I think it's doing too much to say we're one. And like, so basically, it's not that I have to love you like I love myself. By loving you, I am loving myself. I think that's saying too much, because we really are not one. You can eat and it's not going to make me have to go move my bowels. Like, I think not recognizing our differences is almost just as problematic as not recognizing our similarities. I think it's our similarities that allow us to have empathy. This is why I like humanism. I think humanism is better than religion, because what it does is it starts where religion starts. Think of the many passages, even in the Old Testament, where the focus is on you, right? Today I've set before you life and death. Choose life, for why should you die? There's this recognition of you value your life. And because of that, then you move on to these other principles of, okay, then what you're willing to do for you, empathy, if not the divine command, causes you to say, okay, how do I protect the rights that I want to continue to enjoy? Well, the best way to do that would be to ensure that everybody has those kinds of rights, because we're not the same. The people who are getting deported and sent to Libya, or sent to, these prisons in other countries that they're not from, I don't feel their pain. The only thing that would cause me to feel their pain is empathy, me putting myself in their shoes and recognizing our common humanity, because I'm not them. And so that's why I say I think it does too much to say everything is one. I think there are I'm not the things around me. I'm not the atoms, even though we're made of the same star stuff. I'd like to say, like, all of us, we are the story being told by the stars. Like, some stars exploded, and in that disintegration, they recombinated in what we see now, and they're disintegrating and reintegrating in all these marvelous ways. We're made from the same stuff, but we are not the same thing.
We're made from the same stuff. We're not the same thing. Let's take this to a scientific level. And I take very seriously that I'm not a scientist. I'm not a physicist, right? So take everything I say with a grain of salt, right? We're just chopping it up. You've heard physicists say that there's more empty space in your body than actual matter. That your body is mostly empty space, right?
Well, I've not heard that. I've heard that about the atom, but yeah.
And yeah, so the atom is mostly empty space, and your body is composed of atoms. So on a particular resolution, empty space is all that's there, right? And the empty space connects to the empty space in your room right now. And that empty space connects to the room outside of the room, connects to the empty space outside of the room. Like, walls cannot hold empty space, because they themselves are made of atoms, which are mostly empty space. So all of the empty space in your body is connected to the empty space in my body, right? We're just under a temporary biological illusion. And it's very good that we see this illusion, because if we didn't, we wouldn't be able to feed, fight, flee, reproduce, and accomplish our biological chores. But I think it's almost beyond religion at this point. I think it's common science that we're all connected. Like, it begins with recognizing that the universe is dead silent, right? If I'm speaking into the microphone, air molecules are heading towards your eardrum. Your eardrum vibrates. The cochlea translates that vibration into an electrical signal that it sends to your brain, and then your mind interprets that electricity as sound. So sound is only happening in your mind. Anybody who's watching this video, the universe is totally silent. That's like the first thing they teach you in acoustic phonetics, right? Not only is the universe entirely silent, but it doesn't look like anything, right? Color is what happens when the light spectrum hits your eyes, right? So if there were no eyes, there is nothing to see without eyes, right? It's all happening in your head. And so the Bible says, be still and know that I am God, right? God is found in the stillness, because God is reality. And in reality, there is nothing to see, nothing to taste, nothing to touch. It is pure being. It's pure awareness. And because reality is pure being, pure awareness, When we interact with each other, we should remember that. And it's only when we forget that that we start going forward and scheming on each other and wanting to steal and wanting to, rape and take. And, I fall into it myself. It's very difficult. If you've been raised to identify with stuff, then yeah, you'll feel a certain hell as that stuff begins to deteriorate in the current of development. But I think that's what Christianity is fundamentally about: letting go of those attachments and embracing reality.
So when you use the term God, I guess I'm curious, do you see God as separate and apart from creation, or one with creation?
Both. So I believe in panentheism, which means that we are all in God. So the Bible says, in him we live and move and have our being. And that's the reason I always borrow the womb scenario. We're babies in the womb, right? And so an atheist asking me where God is similar to a baby in the womb asking his twin in the womb where mother is, right? It's like, show me evidence of mother. And I say, well, the mother is all around us. Mother is feeding us. I mean, soon we will meet mother after we, go out of the womb,
So in what way, I get the a part of, in what way is God separate from, and I'm living on the format of Christianity at this point to ask this question. In what way is God separate from creation?
I don't think that God is separate from creation.
I only asked because a minute ago you said both, and I asked, is God a part of or separate from creation? You said
okay.
Yeah.
So what I meant when I said both is we're both in God, but what we see, God is more than what we see. So God is the whole universe and more.
Okay.
Yeah.
This was going to be a clarifying question.
Yeah.
Maybe rope in what you were going to say to this other question. Is God a personal entity? Like, is there personhood in God?
By personhood, do you mean agency?
Not just agency. When I think of personhood, I think of agency, intentionality, intellect, will, emotion.
Well, I would have different answers to all of those. I don't believe that God has desires. And the reason I don't think that God has desires is because I believe that God is completely fulfilled. If God is not fulfilled, then I can imagine a greater being than God. And Christians don't want to say that. So, I can imagine myself having a conversation with a Christian saying, it was like, what do you mean? What do you mean God doesn't have a will, right? The Bible says God has a will. And of course, the biblical writers were anthropomorphizing. They didn't have a correspondence theory of truth. They were storytellers. And I think stories are better for getting truth across than like propositions, let's say. But no, I don't think that God has desires. I think God is completely fulfilled.
Does God have an intellect?
Depends on what you mean by intellect.
A mind.
No.
To think thoughts.
No, God
plan things.
No, God doesn't plan, because the reason I plan is because I'm fallible. Why would an omniscient being need to plan, right? So God is conscious, right? God is consciousness. God is pure subjectivity. But mind is something that is correlated with brains, because we need mind so that we can distinguish between here and there, black and white, myself and yourself, the agent in the arena. I don't think God has any of those distinctions.
So no thoughts, no desires.
Yeah, I mean, God would have thoughts and desires in so much as you and I are temporary excitations of God. So if God, all of your desires, all of your thoughts, are small microcosms of divine processes. So human beings, we want to establish habitable order out of chaos. Whenever you wake up in the morning, that's your job. You're like, I have this chaotic, I have all these options, and I want to make this an orderly situation. And so that's a microcosm of what God does. And because you're fallible, you can make mistakes in that journey. Sorry if I'm talking too much.
No, you're good. I wonder if you would agree, maybe swap out the terms. So Carl Sagan has a famous quote. He says, we, meaning humans without consciousness, He says, we are the ways that the universe comes to know itself.
Mm.
Would you be comfortable saying that sort of like swap out universe for God? Like we are the way that God comes to know itself.
No, I think that God
Okay.
I think God knows himself from the beginning, because I believe that pure subjectivity is recursively reflective, which is the reason that we can say, I know that I know that I know that I know that I know, or I am, God says, I am that I am, right? Consciousness by itself is aware of itself, right? There doesn't need to be an objective pole of experience. The subject can think about itself. That's metacognition, the ability to think about our thoughts, right? So God doesn't need anything to know himself.
So God is conscious.
Oh, absolutely. God is consciousness. God is consciousness itself.
Well, do you see a difference between those two statements? If I say, is God conscious? Is that different from asking, is God consciousness?
It might be. I think people make a mistake when they say, I have consciousness. Consciousness cannot be had. It can only be, like, consciousness is not something you have. It's something you are. You can have a brain. You have thoughts. Those are transient. They come and go. Your brain will one day deteriorate. You'll be dead, right? Same thing with me. But consciousness is not something you have. It's something you are. Your mind is something you have. You can lose your mind. Your mind is private. It's over there. I'm over here. I can't predict your mind. But consciousness is being mode, not having mode. So the thing you are is consciousness.
So God is consciousness.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say God has a conscious, or you would?
No, no one has consciousness.
No one has a conscious. God is consciousness.
God is consciousness. Yeah. That's what you are.
We have consciousness.
No, we are too.
We are consciousness.
So fundamentally, you are God breath. Remember, God breathed into the dust and it became a conscious and living soul. So it's only through the obfuscations that you think of yourself in terms of your identity, where you can say, I'm a rapper, or I'm a Republican, whatever you identify with. I'm a father, I'm a teacher, right? Those things are transient. They're here one day, gone the next. Beneath all of those obfuscations, what's fundamental is the God breath, the consciousness. And when you die, you return to that pure subjectivity. Just like God breathed you out, you will be absorbed back in.
Heaven, hell, either of those concepts, beyond the myth of whatever they're trying to teach, do you see either of those as real possibilities for the quote unquote afterlife, or no?
Absolutely. So I believe that hell is a place of eternal conscious torment. And it's unfortunate. But yeah, I think that definitely exists. And the way that you instantiate hell, in my view, is that you forget that you are an eternal thing and you identify with a dying thing, say your political party, whatever it is, such that whenever those things that are transient die, as they have to, anything beyond God has to die, right? Your biology, trees, bushes, they all will die. The only thing will be left is God. Even the Quran says the only thing which will not be destroyed is the face of Allah, right? So when you choose to identify with transient things, this eternal thing now thinks it's this dying thing. So you have eternal death. You have this eternal thing, God being the only thing that exists. Time and matter themselves are an illusion. But the eternal has now identified with the transient and now thinks it's dying as these transient things die.
And is that the torment, or is there torment added on top of that?
No, I think that is the torment.
The torment is you thinking that you're dying, but you're really not.
Well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where are you when this is happening?
What do you mean? Well, I mean, fundamentally, fundamentally, you have no location. Spirit isn't located anywhere spatio-temporally. Your body is located wherever your body is located.
Right, but when you think about torment, right? Even when you if you've got too many thoughts in your mind at one time, you can torment yourself with thoughts, right?
Absolutely.
But even that torment is in some kind of way attached to nerve endings. Like I could think about myself in pain
Right.
and feel no pain. If
Mm-hmm.
I ever feel pain, it's because there are nerve endings receiving painful signals.
Mm-hmm.
If I am just spirit, where is the torment? Is the torment just an inability to not see myself as eternal, or is there actual pain and suffering? Because when you call it eternal conscious torment,
Yeah.
is there an ouch factor, or is it just an eternal headache from not being able to think rightly about yourself?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And everybody, whether you're the most committed Christian ever or whether you're an atheist, there's an ouch factor to being a human being, right? We're going to put our hand on the hot stove. We're going to get into car accidents. Our bodies are in a state of deterioration. So I think when you mention pain and suffering, right? Pain is one thing. Suffering is another thing. I think suffering is what happens when we think about our pain, when we say to ourselves, how long am I going to be in pain? How long am I going to miss work? What am I going to do, with my family now? And then when you start comparing, that's when suffering takes a whole nother. It's like, why did this happen to me instead of that other person? This other person, he's evil. He does all, that's when it really becomes suffering. But I think what Christ wants us to do is to change our relationship to pain. Right? If you think that the body is passing anyway, and you don't identify with the body, then you will have a far easier time letting the body go when it's time for the body to go. Right? You will never have thought of it as something which has any staying power. Look, I have bad genes. My mother passed in her 60s. My dad is in his 60s, and he's not doing well, and I'm 38. So I'm technically a senior citizen.
You know what I'm saying? I almost wish, I feel like this would be a better conversation if it wasn't couched in Christian lingo, because I feel like you're saying things that are not, it's not far from Christianity, but it isn't Christianity.
How so?
This is, I feel like this is Buddhism mixed with different variations of different worldviews couched in Christian lingo.
Interesting. I was among the Nichiren Buddhists in Colorado Springs. They're the ones who do the quote, the Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. I went there to convert them all to Calvinism. I was hella arrogant, right? I just thought, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be an apologist. I'm gonna do this, and so this was my super arrogant phase. I thought I was gonna walk into this Buddhist temple and convert all these Buddhists. So I'm talking to them about Jesus, and they're sitting in their circle, and I'm just preaching to them, proclaiming the gospel or whatever. And they're just listening to me. They're giving me open, curious attention, which I've come to realize is the currency of love, right? And I start to just sound stupid to myself, and I stop talking. And the Buddhists reveal to me, they say, Jesus was Buddha. And I said, well, no, I mean, Siddhartha Gautama was Buddha. Like, I know my history, And they're like, no, Siddhartha was a Buddha, and Jesus was a Buddha, as evidenced by his life and teachings. And you are a Buddha too. If you would just drop off all of the obfuscations, you're Buddha underneath, right? And it's the same thing within Islam. They embrace Jesus. There's no religion that doesn't embrace Jesus, and the vast majority of atheists embrace him. They just don't embrace him as God, because they like to have kind of the low resolution image, which is the scientific image. No shame, you know what I'm saying? But there's no one who doesn't embrace him. So it's like, all right, that kind of makes it fairly easy, Interesting.
So I'll ask this last question, and then it can go wherever you want to take it. And I know you get pretty soon. So for those, because you said something, you said we are God breath, and when we die, we're sort of absorbed back into that oneness. But the people who go to hell or eternal conscious torment, are they also absorbed back into that oneness, or no?
Yeah, I believe to be absent from the body is to be present with God. God is the only being. God is the only real thing. And so the thing is,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, please.
In the Bible, it says, in his presence, there is fullness of joy, and no impure thing. There's the picture of what happens in the presence of God there will be no suffering. So how do you get someone who experiences eternal conscious torment when they're reabsorbed back into this oneness? And I guess what I'm really asking is, that's one question.
Yeah.
The other question I was going to ask is, why would someone, in your view, ever go to hell or end up in the position of having to suffer eternal conscious torment? For what?
Okay.
Why?
Okay, good. Now, this is gonna get a little bit complicated, and I apologize if it seems like I'm dodging. And
No,
I want you to
it's
stop
okay.
me. No,
I see
seriously.
where you're coming from. That's why I said what I said.
Okay, family, I appreciate you. And stop me if it seems like I'm running or if it seems like I'm missing something, right?
Okay.
So, because this is going to get a little bit complicated. I don't believe that time or space is fundamental, right? Time and space is something that human beings interact with because it's better for our biology to make up those things. And this is not just me. They're exploring this in high energy physics. They're saying that time and space has no operational meaning beyond the Planck scale, which I think is like 10 to the negative 23 seconds or something like that, 10 to the negative 34 for space. So space and time are not fundamental. They're data compression tools that human beings use. So what that means is when you're in hell, right, when you are in this cognitively limited space where you want to murder, where you want to enact vengeance, when you want to do all those things, there is no time fundamentally. So where are you? Like, what's actually going on there? I believe when your biology dies, by the grace of God, you're just forgiven for that place. You made it up. Like, hell is something that is a consequence of you being in this cognitively limited space that you created, right? Like, whenever you intend to, like, imagine I start lying to you, right? We're talking and I just start lying, especially if we're face to face. If I'm lying to you, I have to use free energy in my brain, not only to keep track of my lie, but now I have to start studying your cues to make sure that you're buying into my lie. I have to take, your facial expression. I have to take into account your body language and making sure my body language seems like I'm telling the truth in spite of the fact that I'm lying. I'm mentally fragmented. So there are people who use lying as a general purpose tool. They're never authentic. I'm sure you've known those people before, right? And those people are in a very, very confined, cognitively limited tyranny. And freedom from that requires forgiveness. It requires radical non-retaliation, like we talked about before, the principles that Jesus set forth. But it's possible for a eternal being through this dissociative process that we're on to find themselves identifying with the transient to the extent that they're in hell. But I do believe that ends, that process cannot end. It cannot continue after your biological life, because the only thing which is fundamentally real is God.
So wait, what process? You said the process cannot continue after
biological death. No.
What process cannot continue?
Hell.
So then it can't be eternal conscious torment.
The only thing that exists is the eternal. So if you say that hell is temporary, then you're looking at a low resolution image of time and space. So if time is not fundamental, if time and space are not fundamental, that means there is no space between you and I right now. And that's trippy to think about, right? But it's like with the low resolution image that our eyes can handle, we see each other as distinct and different creatures. But in reality, according to, the sciences, as we continue, right? It's like we're just fluctuating atoms in the cosmos with mostly empty space. So the question just becomes, what resolution do you want to grant priority to? And Jesus says, grant priority to the way of being, right? Not the human being. That's going to die. Don't identify with that. Don't accessorize that. Don't build up treasures to yourself on earth, because then you're going to be going through hell as those treasures dissolve in the current of development, right? And I think it's a very, very wise. That's a very.
So
wise
you were worried about losing me. You didn't lose me at all. Like I said, I just think this is not textbook Christianity, and by textbook I mean Bible.
Okay, but where have I gone against the scripture?
So depending on which gospel and which book of the Bible you're in, hell is an experience that is real. The bodily resurrection of the dead prior to the judgment happens, like you're bodily resurrected. And based on the way that you live your life, you will suffer or you will be rewarded, which sort of conflicts with the whole idea of being saved through Jesus's, work on the cross, if suffering and reward is based on how you live. But you have these different depictions of what happens after death. It is appointed to man once to die, and after that, the judgment. And then what happens at the judgment, and the idea of hell being thrown into the lake of fire, and the smoke of the torment of those who were liars or homosexuals or whatever is rising before God forever. Now, you might say, no, those are just myths to help communicate the idea that you're going to have this eternally conscious experience of thinking you're dying when you're really not. But I think those are things that are being added or poured into Christian jargon, because, and this is one of my issues with Christianity. If you don't take it as a fundamentalist and literally, then you're free to do the things that you've done tonight. You're free to do a number of things if you're not going to take it literally. And there's no arbiter, there's no one to say, nah, Mr. Biscuit took it wrong, or this person took it. Like, we're all free, if you're not going to take it literally, we're all free to take it as literarily as we like. And no one can say who's more right or who's more wrong. It's really just a matter of, I like the way he broke that down.
But isn't that an issue that spans across all books and all narratives? I mean, I was watching the Kurt Jaimungal podcast, Theory of Everything. I don't know if you watch it. He has like physicists on, and physicists are debating quantum mechanics, the Everettian hypothesis, and string theory. And I mean, we can't agree on the phenomenal plane, let alone the noumenal plane. So, I mean, disagreements about theology shouldn't shock us. And the thing is, I'm more interested in orthopraxy than orthodoxy. It's like, I understand there's an orthodox way of looking at things. There's a majority of church members who see things a certain way. But Jesus himself was outside of the orthodoxy during his day. So I think that was a kind of a salute to those of us who are deeply seeking and who are at least open-minded,
Here's why that wouldn't work for me. Meaning being lost in a text or communication makes sense if the communicator is no longer present. So if the communicator of divine revelation and holy books is not on the scene and we're left to our own devices, then 1,001 interpretations prevail. If we're saying that the giver of the revelation, the communicator of the truth or truths, is still present and still speaking and still able, like, I wrote a book. My book is right here, right? Let There Be Gaslight. Once I'm gone, anybody can say, I think on page 283 when he says this, he meant this. Well, to me, I think he da-da-da-da-da. They can disagree. If they disagree in my presence, surely as the author, I have the ability to say, you're both wrong, or no, she's more right than he. You're 30% right, you're 70%. If the communicator is there.
Well, let me ask you this to challenge that. As an author, and shout out to you for being an author. That's amazing. I hope I can order a copy of your book. I would love to.
I'll send you the audio book if you want.
I would 100% appreciate it, and I'll give you feedback. Maybe we can talk again. But as an artist and an author, I'm sure that you are aware that, like, an artist doesn't have the entire scope of what they've even created. Like, when I create music, I've had people come up to me and say, hey, I love when you did this and this and that and this and that, and that connected this over here. And I'm like, yo, I didn't even mean to do that. You got to understand, spotlight awareness or metacognition is a very, very small percentage of brain processing. So what you intended to do in that book is that book that you wrote goes far beyond any of your intentions, because of what's called relevance theory, established in 1986. The question of the relevance theorist is, how do we say so little and understand so much? So the reader of your book is understanding far more than you've written in the pages every single time. If I say, hey, I'm feeling calm and collected and peaceful today, your understanding of the words calm, collected, and peaceful have to do with your background and your circumstances and your biology and your nature and your nurture, right? So what I've said hits you differently than I intended it, right? And that's the reason I agree with like St. Augustine. He said God wrote two books, the book of Revelation being the Bible and the book of creation being the universe, and each book should interpret the other. Which means we should take, the scripture says the heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the work of his hands, night after night they pour forth speech. That means the Bible isn't the only thing speaking, right? My life is the speech as well. So I should use my life and interpret the Bible by that light, and use the Bible and to interpret my life, right? It's a reciprocal kind of processing.
Yeah. So I get that. I think you're 100% right in terms of limited, fallible, non-omniscient, non-omnipotent authors. Mm-hmm. And this sort of what,
what's beautiful about that non-omniscient. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I gotta this part. I love that. That is my favorite thing about the Bible. It's like Moses tried to see God. He's like, let me just see you clearly, right? And God's like, no man shall see my face and live, right? Even the scientific community tells us if we had a one-to-one correspondence with reality, we would dissolve into a sea of entropy. We can't see it all. We need a filtered perception of reality, filtered through eyes, noses, ears, right? And then in Joshua's life at Jericho, doesn't understand God. Like, God, you said you'd given this to us, and now there's archers ready to kill us at the walls of Jericho. And the life of Job and Jesus's disciples were completely confused about Jesus's message. Throughout, the Apostle Paul said, I consider myself not to have apprehended it. Throughout the entire Bible, all of its writers are saying, I don't get it, but this is my best interpretation of the God that I'm trying to express to you. And I stand on those same shoulders.
So what I'm getting at, though, is limited recipients of this revelation, limited interpreters of the revelation is one thing. Is the giver of the revelation, if the Bible is revelation, is the giver limited? Is the giver lacking in his ability to communicate its desire, its design, its here's what I wanted you to get from this? Or does the deliverer want 1,001 interpretations?
Well, the deliverer doesn't want anything. The deliverer is completely fulfilled. So it's us that want things.
So, but here's the thing: to reveal, if the Bible is revelation, that means a God revealed it. Mm-hmm. You don't reveal unless you want to be known. So you at least. This is why I'm saying you're talking about a different God than the Christian God. I don't think the Christian God wants to be known.
See, here's the thing. I don't think that's true. Like if I reel in a fish and there's a fish on the end of my line and the fish can't breathe and it's writhing around, that's not a punishment from the ocean. The ocean is its proper place. It would be best if it were put back into the ocean before it dies. God, in my understanding, is like the ocean in that way. When you remove yourself, death comes because you have forgotten something which is fundamental. That doesn't mean that the ocean is there to judge you or that the ocean abandons its omniscience by focusing. Right? When you focus on something, you have to background other things. That's the definition of focus. So how can God remain omniscient if he's backgrounding things in order to focus on one individual object? I've never been able to make that make sense in my mind. And I think that it would frustrate God's fulfillment. What
you're pointing at, though, is the problem with an omni God, right? If God is omni this and omni that, you can't have wants. You can't, yet you have a God who seems to have these wants. And like I'm saying, unless you think there was no purpose in giving revelation, you have to at some level say, God must have wanted us to know something about it. Otherwise, it would not have revealed itself in these ways.
We're talking about knowing God right now. So you're familiar with the scripture, and we mentioned it already. Be still and know that I am God.
Mhm.
Right. So I don't think that that's just physical stillness, even though I think that that includes it. I think it's being still in your mind. It's almost like a meditative state. It's like quiet everything which is transient. The phenomenologist Rupert Spira calls it undressing, meaning take off everything which is not fundamental. And then once that stillness is established, you'll hear your intuition begin to speak. Right? You'll just start to have feelings. And then the temptation when those feelings pop up is to label them. Like, oh, this is fear. That's the left brain. Like, shut that down. Right? I mean, not aggressively, but let that pass and let that intuition speak. Right? And I think that is the voice of God. And the intuition is not saying what you write down. Right? Intuition is right brain. That's the master. The left brain is the emissary. It wants to codify. It wants to have. Remember, we talked about the modal confusion, the being mode and the having mode. God is pure being. And because we want to turn being into having, we have to use our left brain to interpret the intuitions and start writing things down. So, okay, this is what I think these feelings mean, right? And it's like, it's okay for what it is. Don't worship it. Don't take it literally. Take it seriously.
So then
right?
Would you say the Bible is revelation from a God, or just human beings trying to make sense of the God that they believe they're in communication with?
Both, but I wouldn't call the revelation intentional.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the only difference.
Yeah. So you kind of leave me without a, like, your Christianity is nebulous to the point where it's like I have a hard time calling it Christianity. I think you're spiritual and your terminology is Christian. And I would have a hard time trying to identify where you are in the spectrum, because every time I bring up a Christian principle, you don't necessarily throw it out. You just mean something different by those same words.
I don't think so. Jesus, they asked Jesus, what's necessary for this kingdom you're bringing? He said, look, love the Lord your God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself. That's all that's necessary according to Jesus for Christianity. Jesus even said, in the scripture that I mentioned, there will be those who enter the kingdom who have no idea what Jesus's name is. There were just people who were going about feeding the poor and looking after the widow. Being a Christian is not as difficult as the West has made it seem. Jesus said so much. He said, you make it hard to enter heaven. That was his criticism of the Pharisees. With your doctrine, you've made it hard to enter heaven, and you don't even get in yourselves. And so I'm embracing the simple Christianity. I've been using scripture throughout, but it's like I embrace the simple Christianity that I think Jesus believed in.
Yeah. Like I said, you have multiple gospels depicting Jesus different ways.
I love that too.
Yeah.
Because what it means is you can't see Jesus as a stagnant object. Jesus is a complicated process, a way of being. And some of them were actually confabulated. So you know the story where Jesus, the woman caught in adultery, where he brings her and he says, he without sin cast the first stone. Bro, that never happened. That story was added way later. Dr. Josh White had to come to terms with that during his debate with Bart Ehrman. It's like he's like, yeah, this never actually happened. However, it is in keeping with the spirit of Jesus. Right? The biblical writers weren't trying to capture every historical detail of the actual historical Christ. They were trying to show you the spirit, the way of being. In the same way Plato said about Socrates, I have made Socrates more beautiful in my writing. What Plato was saying is, I'm not giving you every historical detail. I'm making some stories up because I'm trying to give you the spirit of the man instead of something useless, which is, how often he went to the bathroom.
So this is the thing then. So then, could it all be fiction? But it's the spirit that some elders thought our community needs people who are more selfless. Our community needs people who are looking out for others and people who are, and so we're going to write stories about a person, even about a people that lead to this point in history, like myth. And this is great. We can kind of end on the same point we began with.
Okay, yeah.
We can create a myth that has the spirit that we want people to embrace. Could that be what is actually going on when you hold the Bible in your hand and it changed nothing about what you're saying? Or do you think if it was all purely myth, then that ruins it for you?
I guess I'm not exactly sure, because you can't get out of bed in the morning without myth. Myth is just how you structure the facts, and you can't just have pure facts.
We could create a new myth right now.
100%.
That does. Somebody could say, let's create a new myth that does even better than what the Jesus myth did. It'll keep some of the spirit, but in light of what we know now in terms of how things have progressed, because there are things that Jesus would not have been okay, things that Paul would not have been okay with, that we're okay with now because we've progressed. Humanity has progressed, right? Let's make a new myth that has the spirit we liked then, but even more of the spirit that we appreciate now. And then we can get rid of we can get rid of the Vedas, we can get rid of all the old myths, we can get rid of, but it's going to do what the old ones did and more. Would that be okay?
Jesus said, greater things shall you do than I have done, because I go to the Father. So, I mean, if we were to create another myth, I mean, the Bible is probably the most impactful book in the history of the planet. So, I mean, as far as sales and all that other stuff, we might not compete with the Bible, but yeah, I think that it would be, a lot of people, a lot of literature has been built off of the Bible, it's like off biblical principles. We can definitely create a new myth, and the more people embrace it and the more people say this is amazing, I guarantee it will be correlated with how tightly it relates to the biblical stories. 100%.
All right, let me go see if there's any super chats. And I haven't been paying close attention to the chat, but I'm going to scroll up and see what's happening. You got a minute or two for some super chats?
Hey, 100%. 100%. Thanks for bearing with me. I get a little long-winded.
No, I appreciate you, man. Like I said, I'm looking forward to this conversation. I think some of the Christians in the chat, I don't know. They might say I should have somebody on who's more traditional, if I'm going to call it a conversation with a Christian. But like you said, you were in the scriptures the entire night, so they got to take that issue up with you. Let me see here.
But the thing is, look, I think when an atheist, when you dig into what a Christian believes deeply, when you start to give them those real critiques that came from like the Christopher Hitchens of the world and the Richard Dawkins of the world, you will find that a lot of Christians, they're kind of more satisfied with saying, I don't know. But scripture says, look, it is the wisdom of God to conceal a matter and the wisdom of kings to search it out. So be a king. Search these things out, and don't be scared of coming up with a perspective that isn't necessarily shared by the people around you. Okay.
Halt 333. Thank you for the $1.99 super chat. Said, can I be up next?
Let's go.
Do you know this? Is this one of your subscribers?
No, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think
Halt 33 is.
Forgive me, Halt. If you're Ichabod subscriber, I don't know if your name doesn't look familiar in the chat. So forgive me. I'm sorry if you're part of the squad here. Can I be up next? I'm gonna drop my email in the chat. Let's talk about it. But thank you for the super chat. Still scrolling through to see if there's any others. If you got questions for myself or for Mr. Biscuit, make sure you go subscribe.
Now I have live members in the chat. I have 38 watching right now. So if anybody wants to ask me a question from my chat, feel free to drop that. And I can
let me know if you have any on your side, and I'll make space to get that in there. Thank you for your time, man. I know this is part of your work day. Thank you for working this in.
No, for sure. I love this. I love this. I always want to challenge my beliefs and challenge my ideas. We didn't actually get into God, which we should at a later date. We didn't get to the existence of God. We kept it on religion, which is fine.
Yeah. All right. I don't see any more super chats unless you're typing it in right now. This is your last call for alcohol. Get it in.
Mel, now Mel is one of my subscribers. Mel says, do
Yep.
you believe we created our creator? No, I don't believe that we created our creator. I think that we create an image of our creator. So there's a quote that says, it's another Rupert Spira quote. His quotes are so long I can barely memorize them. I try to commit them to memory, but we perceive reality and we conceive the image of reality. So there's perception.
Say that again.
We perceive reality and we conceive its image. So so reality is something that we perceive. And we conceive its image, which means everything that you're experiencing, you're in reality, right? But what you've done is you've constructed images. You've constructed borders, boundaries, colors, sounds, tastes, right? Those things aren't real. They're important for this biological journey you're on. If there were no human eyes, there would be no human interpretation of color. Like, obviously, if there were no ears, there would be no sound, right?
Do you think God is a creator, the creator of our experience? Is that would you say that God has created this experience?
Absolutely. God is the creator.
All right. I have two questions. How does that gel with your idea that, and this is why I think the omnis create a problem. If God has no desires,
right,
why does God create anything at all?
God creates because he is pure being. So God is a pure state of unfolding and reaching, right? Without intention, right? It's not intentional. God is pure being with no objective pole of that experience. And that's what I think occurs after you die. I think the objective pole of experience melts away and you're returned to pure subjectivity, pure consciousness. And I feel like it'll, a part of me feels like it'll be a remembrance, right? And to remember means to reestablish membership. Before you were born, you were a member of this one whole, right?
Right.
And I think you will remember after you die.
But I guess I like that wordplay there. I'm still curious. Why does the creator create anything in the first place?
So I don't think there is a why. It's just because why would imply intention. And if there is no intention, then the creation is spontaneous. Just like the excitation of a field, like if you're talking about like a quantum field, the excitations are spontaneous, right? And so the creation of God, the creation of the universe was spontaneous.
So there's no meaning or purpose to it all.
Well, meaning is only for something that's referring to something other than itself. So the word phone has meaning because it refers to this. The word phone doesn't refer to the word phone. It refers to the actual object. So God would have no meaning because God doesn't refer to anything beyond himself. He is
I'm talking about the creation.
Real.
Is there a meaning for the creation?
Oh, for sure. Oh, absolutely. Creation is full of meaning, right?
I think you're answering something different.
Okay.
I'm asking if the creator has no intention, then there's no purpose. So all the life that we see, we can make meaning, we can find functionality, but in terms of purpose, there is no purpose if there was no intention.
Well, I don't necessarily think that's true because God still has a way of being and a way of not being. And that's the reason that so take this, for example, God is one, which means fundamentally the truth is that there's one thing. So how does that give us purpose, right? So the way that I should behave toward you, I should behave as if instead of two things, there is one, which means I should share. I should do these associative behaviors like sharing, charity.
So that we could reflect the oneness that we come from.
Exactly. And whenever we don't, whenever we don't reflect that oneness, we tend to call that evil, right? And so we didn't make that up. It's not that human beings created that. It's pointing to a fundamental truth. So when Jesus said, I and the Father are one, love your neighbor as yourself. And then Paul goes on to say, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. Do the same thing as him, right? It means when our behavior is in keeping with oneness, that's the purpose. And that's not something we made up. It points to a fundamental truth.
So maybe I can ask my question. I can sneak it in this way then. If the fundamental truth is the oneness that we're trying to reflect and even get back to, what was the reason or the occasion for the oneness disintegrating into what seems like this multi, the division? Like, why did the cell divide?
Sure. Yeah. And I think that if anyone studies like Dr. Bernardo Kastrup's work, and I mentioned him, I think already in this, he's a philosopher. He has a PhD in philosophy and PhD in computer science, but he's the champion of analytical idealism. And what he says is it's a process called dissociation. So, wait, did I go?
Yeah, lost the image.
Did I go blank?
You hear me? Uh-oh. I think we lost him. Hopefully he'll dial back in. I still see him, man. I see you in the backstage. When I try to add you, it goes back to your device is not connected. This is your last chance to get your super chat in if you got a question for myself or Mr. Biscuit. I'm going to take him out of the studio and hopefully he can come back in. Mr. YouTube will be removed from the studio if you want to prevent him. All right, I think I'm going to kick him from the studio. Wait. I have you added. I don't know if you can hear me. I hear you. Do you hear me? 1 2 1 2. I hear you. I'm gonna drop my my email in the chat for Halt, who said, "Can I be next? We could talk about it." You can email me there. I just put it in the chat for you. We're still here, giving Mr. Biscuit a chance to reconnect what he got going on. All right, I'm going to remove him from the, if you can hear me, Mr. Biscuit, I'm going to remove you from the studio. Maybe you can sign back in and we can get a proper, oh, wait, there you go. Yep.
Bro, can you hear me?
Yes.
So my camera, my camera died. So now I'm on my phone.
All right, I'm going to remove the other one from the studio. Hopefully this doesn't.
Okay, for sure.
No, actually, I'm not even going to mess with it. I'm going to leave it alone because I don't want that to kick you out. All right.
Yeah, we were having a dope conversation at first. Hopefully my audio is not terrible. I'm now using like my earpiece.
It sounds hallway-ish, but it's not terrible. You're fine.
Okay,
You're
good.
fine. I had one more comment from Holt. Let me see, where was it? A super chat said, "Catholics and purgatory, y'all are making us drink." I'm not sure what is that in reference to something y'all were talking about in the chat.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Okay, I don't get the reference there, but thank you for the $1.99 super chat. Scrolling, I don't see any more popping in. So on that note, yeah, if you want to come back and we could talk about the God stuff, I'm going to send you a copy of the audiobook. I don't know if the audiobook though would be up your alley because I wrote the book for people who had a more fundamentalist view. People who don't see, if they see myth at all, they see myth the way C.S. Lewis saw it. When C.S. Lewis said Christianity is the one true myth, like basically, and I kind of wonder, I don't know, man. I would love to know how you got to where you are, because for most progressive Christians that are okay with using the terminology of myth, the reason why they do that is because they understand that a lot of the stories that you see in Genesis were grafted from older cosmogonies and other origin stories from the people around them. And so they realize that if they're going to be true to the academic study that's going on in Old Testament studies, they have to say that a lot of the stories you find in the book of Genesis are not stories about reality. And so they start using the term myth. Even William Lane Craig uses the term mytho-history when he refers to Genesis chapters 1 through 11.
There you go.
So I'm not sure how much that's what you're doing, but a lot of them, when they do that, they're okay with using myth because they realize, I can't call this historical. I can't say these are things that really happened in history. There's a kernel of truth, and the stories are the vehicles that were used to deliver those kernels.
See, but if it was a historical truth, let's imagine that it wasn't myth and it was just a story in history. Like, wouldn't that be less life applicable? Like, wouldn't it be less powerful? Like, because I don't understand. Like, because people say, like, I want this correspondence with the truth. Like,
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I'm a philosopher, so I think back to Socrates and the natural philosophers, where Socrates went to the natural philosophers. They were telling the truth about their findings, but he said, "How now shall we live?" Right? It's like, what does this give me in terms of like how to live? Like, you're finding this cool stuff, but I'm going to go to the sophists and see if they have some relevance, because I don't just want the truth. I want how the truth should impact me, what I should do about the truth. And I think that's what you get from kind of, you know, not necessarily abandoning the shallow literal interpretation, but asking yourself, what is this story trying to teach me? Right? And then if you get that nugget, what is this story trying to teach me? That's what the whole thing is about. Right? I mean, arguing over, whether, you know, these characters actually lived or what the writers were intending. It's like all of us feel different than what we say. I mean, feelings are complicated. So what we say never matches. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, here's why it matters, though. Here's why the literal nature, or at least the historical, if you don't think it's literal, why it matters. Because how shall we then live is answered by the commandments. But the commandments only have authority if the God who gave the commandments really did part the sea, really did fire from the top of the mountain. If there's no authority to the commandments, who cares how you say how I should live? Who are you? You know what I'm saying? So the question of how shall we then live is answered by the authority behind these commandments. And if you don't have historical accuracy, something that you can trace back to say, here's why I should believe a God said this, well, then, pardon the language, but it's almost like, fuck your commandments. Like, I don't have to do anything that you're saying I should do because there's no authority to it.
Yeah, I feel you. I would say, and the thing is, I would say that the authority is like super clear. So for me, like, if you take sacrifice, for instance, where did sacrifice come from? Sacrifice came from human beings wanting to interact with the future. So what we did is we say, okay, like an example of ancient sacrifice might have been, all right, we have a lot of fish today. And because we brought in a lot of fish, we're going to sacrifice half of our fish to this other tribe. So we want to sacrifice now to see if we can get, something in the future. It's delayed gratification. Like, our tendency, like, we think that it's rational to delay gratification, and it is egocentrically rational. But the foundation of delayed gratification is sacrifice. So the question became, like, what can I sacrifice in order to please the gods? And that was kind of handed down. If you sacrifice this, you will gain this. If you sacrifice that, you'll gain that, right? And it's like, that's the universe choosing, right? And I mean, to me, that pairs really nicely with evolutionary biology. The universe is something that selects, right? If you don't partake in these behaviors, you won't be selected for, right? And so, as someone who's really into cognitive science, when Jesus says, deny yourself, love your enemies, forgive without limit, believe in his teachings, and renounce everything, that is a recipe for cognitive availability. It truly and genuinely is freeing. Like if you take him at his word, like those things really do free people, you know?
Yeah. So some of those, I wish we'd not had time. We used our time however we used it, but some of those tenets I think are problematic, even from a Jesus. But that's a conversation for another time. Particularly the forgive without limits. I think that's a horrible tenet to live by. Forgive without limits opens you up for me to abuse and being taken advantage of. I think there's some things that are unforgivable. And I think,
I think forgive doesn't mean forget, right? I mean, you can remove somebody from your life. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people, confuse forgiveness as like, I'm just completely forgetting what you did. We're starting from square one. Yeah, I'm not saying be naive, but yeah, that's a different discussion.
Yeah. So we got a super chat. Thank you. It's Sage of. I hope I'm saying your name right. Sorry if I'm not. Thank you for the $10 super chat. Says, why should we desire to seek these things in the Bible and meanings if God has no desires?
Why should we desire to seek these things in the Bible and meanings if God has no desire? Why should we have desires if God doesn't? Well, we're not God, right? So, I mean, we have desires as a matter of course. We want to fulfill our desires. I mean, you had a desire to ask that question. I have a desire to respond to it, right?
Let me ask you a question real quick while you're answering this. Does God want us to obey it?
God has no desires. God has no
want us to obey it.
God wants nothing. If God had a want, that means he's unfulfilled. And if he's unfulfilled, then I can imagine a higher being than God, which I cannot. So but we feel, right? So it is still accurate to say we should do the will of God, but recognize what you're saying, right? When I say do the will of God, do I literally mean God wants me to do something? No, what I mean is a fish should remain in water. What I mean is that because there is a oneness, I shouldn't entrench myself in ideas of separation. I shouldn't take distinction literally, right? Because the further I go away from what's fundamental, the more I suffer.
Appreciate that. So next time we get up, if we do get a chance to talk about God, like my thing, I think God, you may have heard me say this if you watch the podcast, I think God is an ancient hypothesis. And I think even the New Age attempts to merge Christianity with Eastern ideas, I think it's trying to keep alive old ways of making sense of reality. Like you said, even controlling the future, right? Or controlling the weather or controlling enemies, trying to regain mastery over things that we cannot control. I think religion and gods are ancient ways of doing that. And I think if we could motivate ourselves, if we could find better ways to motivate ourselves than the ancient ways, I think we will be better as humanity. But I think I respect what to me it seems like you're doing is you're trying to modernize the ancient way of making humans be better humans. That's what it seems like to me you're doing. And I think if we could drop the ancient language, the God talk and the spirit talk and all that, I think all the creativity that we have, all the brain power that we're using, I think we could do a better job of doing that.
And just the last thing I'll say, I think we need more spirit talk and less individual talk. That's probably the fundamental distinction, right? It's like, if I can see you as a way of being, that means I can still interact with you after you die. I mean, and I know that sounds weird, but it's like, if let's say that you and I are such close friends that we have inside jokes, that we just like joking about this special thing, that no one else really knows. It's just kind of between me and you. Or let's say you tease me in a way that's, that I like. And it's like, you just, you kind of have that way of just joking, right? That means when you die, I will still see you in other people because I'll recognize your pattern. It's the same thing like when my mother passed, I can now see my mother in my daughter. I can see like my daughter will do things. I'm like, oh, that's my mom. And the thing is, there's nothing wrong with saying that. Even scientifically today, human beings are ways of being. We're processes. Now, if you want to say, you're an individual over there, I mean, my question would just be, what gives you the right to prioritize that low resolution? I think that it's better for togetherness. It's better for connectedness to see each other as ways of being, because then when the human being dies, as it inevitably will, we'll be able to tell stories and realize that person is that story, right? That they're not gone. They're still among us in our memories and in the things that we do to commemorate them.
Appreciate you, man. We went right up to your limit here. I know 5 o'clock on your time is your cutoff. Thank you so much, man.
For sure.
Yeah. Hopefully this will be the first. We'll get it back in. All right, y'all. Much love. Thanks for stopping through. Make sure you like this episode and subscribe to Ichabod. Subscribe to Mr. Biscuit's channel. I'm going to stick around. Give me some feedback, y'all. Let me know what you were thinking. You know what? Do it in the comments. Let me know what you were thinking as you watch this episode. Drop a comment because I need y'all to start throwing some comments on these episodes here, because the algorithm thinks y'all watch, but y'all don't comment, and that's not going to help the channel. So yes, hit the buttons, as Pragmatic Crystal said. This coming Thursday, I'm going to have the brother back on, Brother Smith, who wrote the book on why Jesus is not coming back. He's coming back. So Brother Smith is coming back to talk about my book, Let There Be Gaslight. So that'll be this Thursday on Exit Strategy. Is that Jennifer Bird? Is that who Jennifer B is? Or am I lying there? If that's Jennifer Bird, thank you for coming through. And if that's another Jennifer, still thank you for coming through. All right, y'all, go ahead and have a good night. Make sure you drop a comment, and I'll catch y'all Thursday. Oh, wait, what's today? Today's Monday? I might be back with another pop-up on Tuesday, tomorrow. Okay, I'll see y'all. Have a good one. Peace.